Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are so happy to have as our guest Dr. Charles Benz. Dr. Benz is the founder and president of Healthy at Work. He is an internationally recognized author, speaker, and consultant specializing in the fields of organizational improvement and the prevention and reversal of chronic illness. His creative publications and presentations have garnered praise in the form of Man of the Year recognition both in the U.S. and Canada, and commendation from the President of the United States, as well as speaking engagements worldwide, including a United Nations Habitat Conference. Dr. Benz is a top-rated speaker for Vistage International, the largest CEO organization in the world. He was named the Val Visiting Professor for the Ottawa Regional Cancer Center, and he has written 9 books, including Healthy at Work, Your Pocket Guide to Good Health, as well as many other articles. And lately, he has been writing quite a bit also about our current COVID situation. Find him, Dr. Charles Benz, that's drcharlesbenz.com. And thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Charles.
It's my pleasure, Ellen. Thanks for having me.
Let's go back in time for a moment and tell us how you got involved in this topic as your focus of health.
Well, it was about 35 or 40 years ago, and I had been a person that loved to eat red meat and drink beer and do a lot of other things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. And I ended up with a urinary tract problem, and the doctor said they had to operate on me. And I didn't like that option, so I was giving a talk in San Diego, and I went to a health food store there, and all of a sudden there was a book, How to Cure Urinary and Prostate Problems Naturally, $4.99. I opened it up, and the first thing it said is stop eating red meat and alcohol and take these supplements and eat this diet. The short story is, within about 3 months, my problem was resolved, no operations. But it kind of inspired me to try to learn more about nutrition. I spent the next 15 years learning about it, and then I couldn't stand it anymore. I decided to switch careers, get my PhD in nutrition, and make this the focus of my life. So I had to get sick before I realized I needed to get better.
That's a great story, Dr. Charles. And actually, almost every single person who is on the path towards health and wellness really has a similar story where they had a personal experience, or in the case of many physicians, I will say, who have come to recognize natural healing as really the only treatment option for all degenerative illnesses, their loved one perhaps got an illness that was never resolved. And they did the same thing as you. Of course, in those days, what you're talking about, there was no internet to go Google natural remedies for a healthy prostate like there are now. It's just amazing, or a healthy urinary tract. But now it's so out there, and that's probably why I went to a regular commercial grocery store yesterday. I was here on Long Island, like Stop and Shop, and there's Publix in Florida. Doesn't matter. When you walk in there, you think you're in a health food store again because the aisles are loaded with natural and organic products. Why? Because people are voting with their actions and their dollars. So, hopefully it'll actually filter down into conventional medicine at some point, since it is the correct way to go.
Well, that's a great point, because I remember reading during my journey a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes around 1860, and he was a brilliant jurist, and he said at the time, a key to a long and healthy life is to get a chronic disease and take good care of it.
Wow, that's a great quote. Thank you for sharing it.
And I think that recently you've seen the evidence of this within 2 or 3 weeks of the coronavirus popping out. Online sales of vitamin C and vitamin D, every store on the internet was sold out. So even though the doctors aren't mentioning it, the people understand this. And now it's gone through 2 or 3 cycles of these stores being sold out of vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc, all the things that are important. You think that people don't know this stuff, and then all of a sudden you see a statistic like that. And in myself, I had people going to buy stuff and on my site, and they couldn't get it because my suppliers were all out.
That's true. And also elderberry, echinacea, all of the things that really do work, and all the respiratory herbs like mullein and elecampane and coltsfoot and bupleurum, all of them have been completely sold out in the industry. And with the herbs, it becomes a real problem because the amount that's manufactured actually matches the usual demand, right? That makes sense. But those are plants. And if you run out of honeysuckle flowers, you have to wait till next spring, because honeysuckle flowers, by the way, are an extremely important immune support called Lanaphora in Chinese medicine. But in terms of vitamin C, since that's actually manufactured, they can make more. So you have to keep looking back and seeing when it comes back on the shelf. But that's a great point. That's about the fact that with our internet access now, there's a lot that we can do with self-education. But of course, you can get bad information that way as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, even the good information falls into 2 categories of really good and okay good. And vitamin C is a good example of that. There are dozens and dozens of different vitamin C supplements, but unless you have one that has bioflavonoids, you're probably not going to get the same input or uptake into your body, because the body likes to see things in the form that it comes in naturally. And in most fruits, there's bioflavonoids that come with the vitamin C. They're like a package deal. And so I always say to people, try to find a really good vitamin C with the bioflavonoids in it. And so that's just one example. Almost all the other things that are out there are similar. The vitamin D is not the same. If you do it in synthesize it and you make it into a powder, it's not as good as having it in the liquid form. You should take your vitamin D and your vitamin C with the foods that they come from, because again, there are cofactors that you can't possibly get all of them into the nutrients. So if you're going to take a supplement and it's vitamin D3, take it with a food, if you can, that vitamin D3 is in, because then the cofactors will be there and they'll help with the uptake and the use in your body.
Well, I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And today, our guest is Dr. Charles Benz, PhD. You can find him at drcharlesbenz.com. And we'll have all this posted on our archives after the show today. So, Dr. Charles, you are a prolific writer, and I know you've been really keeping up with the latest in science in terms of what people should be aware of to protect themselves and support their immune system.
Yes, I have actually developed a blood panel on my site that actually measures 10 different things that will determine whether you have a good immune system. And it's not always the usual characters. I mean, yes, okay, you need vitamin C, you need vitamin D, but coenzyme Q10 is crucial, because without enough coenzyme Q10, your body's not going to make enough energy. And energy is needed to make your immune system work, because I've been coaching a couple of athletes recently, and they want to run and they want to swim. And I have to say to them, tamp it down a little bit, because the more energy you expend for energy and athleticism, the less energy you're going to have to allow your immune system to do what it wants to do, it needs to do. And so I've had these athletes that are like, they want to run 10 and 15 miles a day. And I've said, look, until you get rid of your symptoms, don't just go for a walk. Then if you get rid of the symptoms, then start a mile or 2 a day. And so everything has to be controlled a bit as far as immune systems go, because it takes a lot of energy. And so this is one of the things that's in the test. And there's about 10, like I said, 7 other things in there. But the main thing is you got to get some zinc in your body. You've got to get some B vitamins, because these B vitamins, they help to make all the hormones and neurotransmitters in your body, especially B6 and B12 and folate. So this combination of 10 things that's in my immune test, it will really tell you how strong your immune system is.
So now this is a test, and how do people get that done? Is it through blood, or how would these evaluations be prepared?
If you go to my site and go under shop and Dr. Benz and flu, you'll see that there's a test there, immune wellness test. And it's expensive. I'm not going to fib to you, but I don't have any control over that. This is what the blood labs charge when they put these things together. But I think it's one of the only really good tests for immune function. So you just download it in my site, pay for it. They send you a requisition. You go to LabCorp, Request, or wherever. You get it done, and the results come back to you. And you can share them with your doctor if you want.
That is actually very interesting, Dr. Benz, because, I live in Florida mostly, right? And then I live in New York occasionally, mostly Florida. But in Florida, for decades, we have been able, as Floridians, to walk into any lab and just ask for any test. You do not need a doctor's prescription. And of course, when you choose to do a test, you usually have to pay for it. It's not going to be covered by your insurance. But as of last year, that has become national, where actually anyone in New York or in any state can just walk into the lab. You no longer need a doctor's prescription. So that's an interesting development.
It is, and I think it's a great development. And one of the things that we've done to make it even easier for people is, along with getting the test, you will get a document that says, if you're out of range, here's what to do nutritionally to get back into range. And so it's a whole thing about self-care. And I think self-care is really crucial. More people should really practice intelligent self-care, because a lot of information is on the internet. We're not saying if you're sick, don't go to your doctor. Go to your functional medicine or your natural doctor, of course. But for a lot of things like testing your immunity and finding out how to increase it, you can do this on your own. So for every one of these items on the test, we have a range that's desirable. And if you're out of range, then it tells you what foods to eat, what foods not to eat, and how do you get your immune system back up to strength. And so you'll see in every one of these things, I'm saying, eat less sugar, because sugar and vitamin C have a similar molecular profile. And so if you don't eat the right amount of vitamin C, then the sugar is going to go into your white blood cells, and you'll think that your immune system is really healthy just from the look of it, but it's not really, because you could suppress your immune system by up to 75% by having too much sugar and not enough vitamin C. So we explain all that in this little document that goes along with the test. So it's kind of like you're getting two for the price of one. You're getting the test, and then you're getting how to balance and improve your immune system.
Well, everything really does start with self-care, which is so easy and so free. I mean, it's actually free. Even when I have done nutritional counseling in places that, let's say, a free clinic, where many of the people who are coming in are very, very limited in funds, what does it cost to make cabbage soup versus going to a fast food restaurant?
I could agree with you more. I wrote a whole article on self-care, and I divided self-care into 5 categories. And I said, you can either be at the bottom end of this, where you depend 100% on whatever doctor you want to depend on, or you can be at the back end of it, like a good hypochondriac at the 5th level, and you can say, I don't trust anybody but myself, and I'm going to do all this myself. And in between, there's 3 other iterations of this self-care model, and explains each one of these iterations and says, if you want to move from step 1 of total dependence to being less dependent, a little more self-care oriented, you go to step 2. And here's what you need to do to get to step 2. and then step 3 and step 4.
Wait. Don't skip all the good part there, Dr. Benz. What is step 1 and step 2? Share with our listeners.
Well, step 1, of course, is you depend on your doctor. And step 2 says, you know what, maybe you should read a little more and open your mind to what the possibilities are for your health. And so it's really, step 2 is about learning that there are options, that the doctors don't know everything. Sometimes we think they do, or they think they do, but they don't. And so you have to first start to expand your mind. Then in step 3, you're kind of looking more at, you know what, I need to actually put some of these things into action. And so then you decide through some of the self-assessments that we include, what things are important to you, and whether you're having stress or whatever it is, we give you a little protocol for working on that. So it gives you enough information to start doing a few things on your own, and maybe even then posing some questions for your doctor. So step 3 is now you're not only exploring and looking into information, you're asking questions, you're actually starting to use some ideas of your own to balance your diet and do a little bit better on the basic things. And then step 4, obviously, you're moving into more of a self-care model where you're looking for a consultation with the doctor. You're not looking to ask questions. You're looking to exchange information and ask him whether he thinks this is a good idea or he thinks that is a bad idea. So it becomes a collaborative effort. So this whole evolution is from doing nothing other than with a doctor to the point where you're now becoming engaged in the process. Your doctor and you are working together as a team. And in step 5, you're really working as a solid 1-2 team to make sure it's your health that you're working on and not some theories that he developed or learned about somewhere.
Dr. Benz, that is excellent information, because every relationship between a patient and a doctor should actually be like that, a co-partnership. And even doctors who are not necessarily trained, like they're not functional doctors, they're conventional mainstream doctors, you can go and say, look, I want to get off these drugs. I'm on 5 drugs now. Which one can I safely stop first? Which one are you willing to cut down? And if they say none, you have to stay on them all the time, you should really fire that doctor and go to a different doctor, because you are the employer. They are the employee, and they should be willing to work with you. So, of course, if you want to bring down, let's say, start getting off the high cholesterol drug, right, then you need to bring your cholesterol down. So you tell the doctor, I'm going to change my diet. I want you to measure my cholesterol. And when it goes down, are you willing to cut this pill out or lower the dose? And you know what? They should say yes.
I've had that discussion hundreds of times, and I don't know how many times I've said, if your doctor won't do this, get rid of that doctor.
Absolutely.
You need a different doctor. And, lots of people have done that. They've been extremely happy with that, because there's just too much information for one doctor to really handle. And so that's one of the reasons why we're introducing a new tool for people. It's artificial intelligence based on functional medicine. You take a half-hour health risk assessment, you add your blood work, and this program gives you a complete analysis of what your needs are right now, what your risk of disease will be 5 years from now. You can then go to the doctor and say, my computer gave me this information. What do you think? Can I take this advice and get rid of this medication and take this instead? And so we're actually trying to streamline this, make it more intelligent. It's like having 5,000 doctors at your disposal for just this one half-hour investment to try to get all this information compiled and then compare it to 40,000 clinical trials. And in 1 second, you get this printout that says, here's the 5 or 10 best things for your health. It's personalized health. That's exactly what we should be doing. Self-care and personalized health.
That is so true. And I want to remind you, listeners, you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. You can always listen to us live or online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information about today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. And this is Ellen Kamhi, your host. Today, our guest is Dr. Charles Benz. You can find all these goodies he's talking about at drcharlesbenz.com. The doctor is a Dr. Charles Benz. So there's so many natural immune boosters, since we'll focus on some of those, so prevalent for all the time, but also for right now. And they are found in nature. And you talked about a lot of them. Like, it's interesting, you said God seems to know what he's doing when he puts vitamin C and bioflavonoids together.
Mhm.
And I know you're keeping up with the literature in terms of the information that we have scientifically. You know, there's a couple of drugs, remdesivir and also something called Pulmicort, that really seems to have some very positive effects when someone unfortunately already has been infected with some virus such as COVID. But we can use sort of natural analogs in many situations.
Yes, and most of those drugs are designed to help people when they've started to have respiratory challenge. And so they really, many of them are designed to suppress the immune system so it doesn't overreact. The immune system is designed to handle these pathogens with things called cytokines. And these cytokines are T cells and B cells and interferon, all the things that the body has available to it. They're all kind of classified into one thing called cytokines. And that's when you end up with this respiratory problem, you end up with what they call a cytokine storm. And that means the cytokines have overwhelmed the balance in the system. And the balance in the system is kept balanced with oxygen. And if you don't have enough oxygen producers in your body, like superoxide, dismutase, and superoxide, then these cytokines will overwhelm and go into the lungs. And that's when you end up with the fluid and the inflammation. And then the lungs can't make oxygen. They can't deliver oxygen to other cells, and it's a big problem. But molecular hydrogen is a very small molecule. You can put it in a tablet, you can put it in your water and drink it. And with that one change alone, you will make this equation more balanced. And so the cytokines won't go crazy in your system. So molecular hydrogen has been used not only as a preventative, but in a gas form, you can use it to actually get this cytokine storm under control, just like those drugs would. So from a nutritional point of view, and you're more into the herbal side of it, but from a nutritional point of view, molecular hydrogen is one of those balancing points. And we have another one called SPM, was specialized pro-resolving mediators. They also do the same thing. So nutritionists are always looking for a nutritional solution. So those are the two that can be used instead of these kind of drugs that they're now using that are effective in some cases.
Right. It is good that they're at least discovering some of those things. Now, what is your personal understanding, Dr. Benz, with all the research you've been doing these many decades, in terms of the end-all and be-all and sort of holy grail being this elusive vaccine, which I will share, have never had any vaccines since I was a child. No flu shots, none of that, and certainly would refuse to use this one. But, I honor people who would like to do so. They should have personal freedom to choose to do it.
I understand vaccines. Vaccines operate under the same principle as homeopathy does. And homeopathy, the principle is to take a very small amount of something that your body, doesn't like or is not good for you, and actually introduce it to the body so that you can then have the body create the antibodies or create the strength that it needs to recognize it and deal with it when it comes up. So I understand the theory behind vaccines. And some vaccines have worked. I think you'd have to say there's probably 3 or 4 smallpox and polio and others that have worked very well. However, we now know that vitamin C has worked for anything that's a virus, whether it's polio or smallpox, has been readily resolved with higher doses of vitamin C. So we know that there are options. But from a public health point of view, sometimes it's necessary to get a vaccine. They've been working 17 years to try to get a vaccine for the COVID version of these viruses, and they have not found it. I don't think they will find it now. And of all the flu shots that have been out there, the biggest success rate they've ever had for any flu shot has been about 40% effectiveness. It usually ranges from 10 to 40%. And so for me, it's not worth the risk of a healthy person. Now, if you're an elderly person, you don't have a good immune system, maybe it's an answer. I'm not a medical doctor, so I won't make that decision for any individual. But I agree with you. And so does Zoltan Rona, who wrote a whole book. He's the premier medical doctor in all of Canada. He wrote a book on vaccines, and he just said, basically, they don't work. And so I agree with you, but you know what? Sometimes you're forced to get a vaccine if you're like a child in the state of California or other states.
Or New York. You cannot go to school. Do you know how many clients I have who have moved out of New York or pulled their kids out of school and homeschooling them before you had to, not have school access because it is mandatory in New York?
Well, we have a program that we give free to any parent that has this problem because we know the biggest problem is usually the carrying agent, and it's usually mercury or aluminum. And we know how to chelate and get those things out of the body. So we have a 3 to 6 month program where children are given certain nutrients like chlorella, and for aluminum, it's silica. You can actually drink silica water. So if you have chlorella and silica, depending on whether you had mercury or aluminum in the vaccinations that are being given, you can actually get them out of the body within 3 to 6 months. And so any of your nurses that have more information on that, please email me, and if I get enough responses, I'll email the protocol to you, and then you can sort of send it back out to people. But that's how you handle the problem. If you don't want to move, you have to get rid of the toxic things that are in the vaccines.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And one of the reasons that looking to just wait for a vaccine to be our holy grail answer to our current health issue is because of how mutable these viruses are. In other words, they're evolving. So by the time they create an effective vaccine for one type of species, it might have changed many, many times already, where the vaccine may no longer work.
There's already a new version coming out that's stronger than the one that's already been out there for a while. In fact, originally there were 3 different versions of it going around, but now there's one that's mutated even more strongly. And so I agree with you. By the time they get to the vaccine, the virus will change, and that's nature's way of protecting themselves. And that's just the same way chemotherapy works in the body. By the time you get done your chemotherapy, the stem cells, the cancer stem cells, have decided to figure out a way to overcome that particular chemotherapy. So you may look like you're free of cancer, and next 6 months later, the cancer comes back. You try to use the same chemotherapy again, and there's already been an immunity developed to that chemotherapy. And
well, thank you, Dr. Benz. We have to actually come to the end of our time together. So please just give a little shout out to our listeners about how they might best find you.
Well, if you Google my name, just Dr. Charles Benz, you'll see my website, you'll see everything. So you don't have to go to just drcharlesbenz.com. But I also have another site called BeHealthyAtWork.com. And just, our articles are all over the place. There's hundreds of them out there. We have YouTube videos. And so if you put my name in there and put YouTube, you're going to see 50 videos. If you go to Total Health Magazine, you're going to find like 50 articles.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Dr. Benz, and thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC or somewhere nearby, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.